All right, everybody, shalom, and welcome to the Yishai Fleisher Show, broadcasting on the Land of Israel Network, and now also on Zoom and Facebook and all the other stuff. And I'm joined here by Rabbi Mike Feuer. Rabbi Mike, shalom and welcome.
Oh, shalom, Yishai. It's good to see you in the virtual sense.
Yes. And weird times call for weird measures, and so therefore we are right now. Not only are we on Zoom with one another, and later this is going to be posted, but we're also recording this in a separate channel for the radio show on the Land of Israel Network.
2 microphones, a camera, and a computer in front of me.
Right.
I'm feeling a little bit trapped.
That's right. And I'm also having a cup of tea right now.
And that's not mentioning the fact the government's probably recording me through my phone. So
yeah. They might not even need a phone anymore. They probably have a chip inside your brain now.
This is true.
Okay. Rabbi Mike, we have a lot to talk about today. We're right at the eve of the new month of Nisan, which is considered one of the most propitious. Propitious, is that the word? Propitious, like a very important month.
I think it's propitious.
Propitious, is it?
We'll look it up later. I'm sure somebody will write to us and correct us. So
That's right. It's an incredibly important month. It's an important month, and we're basically 15 days away from the holiday of Pesach, of Passover.
Ooh, yes, feeling the pressure.
Okay, this is the last day of Adar. We're saying goodbye to Adar, which was an awesome month, but then was also clouded with this other issue of the coronavirus.
It's the last day of Adar. We have a special obligation to have some fun today. That's
right. Although it's been a half a day of a fast, the chief rabbinate and rabbis around the world called for a half a day of fast. So that is also part of our reality. You and I both fasted this morning. And also, let's be serious for a second. 5 Israelis have succumbed to the succumbed to the coronavirus, and according to our own prime minister, more are on the way. Moreover, one of the little jokes that I've been saying to people is that during this horrific and challenging crisis, where we're stuck with our kids at home, where the economy around the world and in Israel is collapsing, and people are dying from an invisible disease. Thank God, at least we have a stable government that shows us the way forward, right? Because that's what you wanted this time, right? And that is the weird and crazy irony, really a wild irony, that during this moment we're also facing a governmental crisis, one that you discussed with me. But you kind of predicted a little bit that there might be some kind of dissolution of. I
don't know if I predicted, but I said that on some level, when something is broken enough, sometimes you have to let it fall apart, right, in order to put it back together. Although I would note at the time I didn't quite have the context of a global pandemic.
Right.
But you know what it makes me think of? I'll tell you. I worked for a couple of years, as you know, with at-risk youth in a wilderness therapy program. They were all classified as emotionally disturbed. And when people ask me, what does it mean? We're all a little bit wacky, especially right now, right? 2 weeks in the house with kids and all that. But I'll give you the definition of what emotionally disturbed is. Picture yourself on a river in canoes, and we're in the Tim River in Florida, and a storm starts to come in. I'm talking about a Florida summer lightning storm that you can see. Sure. Now, you're scared. The wind's picking up. What do you do if you're a normal person? The guy in charge says, paddle, go that way. What do?
You paddle.
You listen, right? He's in charge. He's going to help us. Emotionally disturbed kids turn on you because you're asserting your authority. Mm-hmm. That's the definition, is that when you turn up the pressure, people with emotional disturbance engage in self-defeating behaviors. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's it. It's right now, we need nothing more than leadership.
Right. And
I'm not, without even judging the individuals and talking about what their interests are, but the very fact that as the pressure goes up, they fall further apart, to me says there's a deep, deep disturbance in the system. And I'm not advocating for anarchy, and I'm certainly not, saying that let it all fall apart and we'll just see what happens. But I want to be honest with you, I'm not a true believer in democracy. I see democracy as a system of utility, which insofar as it works is probably the least bad system that we've come up with. But you're seeing it at its worst right now. Right.
And some of the great theoreticians of democracy also claim that it's not a great system. It's the best of the worst. Are we seeing it exactly now? Well, I have to say that the Israeli system of democracy is, in my opinion, not the best form of it. Democracy has many different forms.
Yes.
It's not a great form. And the reason it's not a great form is because, and here I have to give credit to the founders of the American democracy, they were quite concerned with checks and balances, quite concerned to actually disempower the empowered. They were very concerned with that. And in fact, the whole country's kind of, there's a presumption in America that the government is not to be trusted. That was a presumption that the founders put into the system. Now,
yes.
that's a very rare human occurrence. In most countries,
Unique.
the people who wield power want to prop themselves up, and in one form or another, like Caesar, make themselves into a god.
It's worth it, by the way, to touch on why that is, because the greatness of American democracy and its origins is the fact that they understood what a democratic culture really hinges on, which is a sense of civic-minded volunteerism. Right? The founders did not conceive of democracy as producing a professional political class.
Right.
Right. They saw it as an obligation of the landed class, because they were all landed white men. Let's remember that that was really the primary enfranchised class at the time. But they saw it as their obligation to serve for a certain period of time. Right. Whereas now what we have in all our representative democracies is a professional class of politicians whose primary goal is to get reelected without any cynicism. I mean, my primary goal is to keep my job, right? So their job is to be a politician. Now you hope that they, in order to get reelected, what they do is actually serve the purposes of their constituency. But let's remember, particularly in the age of mass media and the ease of manipulation, the two begin to diverge quite quickly. And so I really see what's happening right now is that party politics has overtaken actual democracy as a means for serving the needs of the mass of the people.
Well, party politics is part of it, but there's yet another problem, sadly, here in Israel, and that is the role of the Supreme Court, which is not, again, like in America, not as limited. The American Supreme Court is much, much, much more limited, and therefore cannot act with impunity and make decisions on things that are not justiciable to them. And so what we just had is basically the Supreme Court render a decision that there has to be a vote early about who's going to be the Speaker of the Knesset. And the Speaker of the Knesset in Israel, Yuli Edelstein, who is within Israeli politics, maybe one of the most, I don't want to overstate the case, one of the most moral, decent folks that I know there, right? He's as we say in Yiddish, Ehrlich Yid, you know, he's a religious Jew. I've met him many times. It doesn't mean that he doesn't know how to play the game of politics. He certainly does. He
wouldn't be Speaker of the Knesset if he didn't.
Right. But he is a very decent person. He was also a Russian refusenik. He was also a Hebrew teacher, and he was also at some points a nude model for paintings. Okay, that's right.
That one I didn't know. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable right now. You didn't have to throw that in there.
He's a fine-looking gentleman, and all I mean to say is that he's done you know, a lot of different things. But he's today the Speaker of the House.
Broad professional experience.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. And well, he just literally quit. It's never been in Israel's history that the Speaker of the House quit.
You're going to title this show "Naked Politics."
Naked Politics. That's right. The naked korban. Naked. Yes. We're going to talk about sacrifice. Naked sacrifice. The naked sacrifices. That's right. That's right. So we have this political event that's happening. Before he quit, he basically went off on a tantrum saying that the Supreme Court is out of bounds and is wrecking Israeli democracy. He spared no words on them.
Can I throw out there, that is part of party politics. I mean, I don't know if you ever listened, way back at the beginning of season 3 in my show, In the Jewish Story, I did a couple of episodes on the nature of the lack of constitution that we have. We are the only democracy in the world who has a constitution, which is essentially promulgated by the Supreme Court itself, which is really the core problem, in my humble opinion, that you're dealing with. And the reason I call it party politics is because historically the Supreme Court has taken an unabashedly left-wing stance on political and cultural issues. And as the left has sort of declined in its ability to sort of fight its agenda out in the parliament, right? What they've done is
what you mean is that they have less ability to marshal people to vote for them. In
Right,
other words,
that's
they're
what
not popular.
People don't vote
Right.
for them, right? I'm not
Right.
saying that there's a technical issue. Thank you for that clarification.
Right.
It's just people aren't voting for them, so they can't get their agenda through the parliament because they don't represent the will of the majority of the people any longer. But the court, because the court is always the least sort of popular democratic element of any constitutional system. By definition, you don't want the court to be politicized and have a popular mind. You want them to be legal scholars. The problem is that the court is essentially adjudicating questions, like you mentioned, which are way out of the bounds of any other constitutional court in the world. Right? Aaron Barak was called by a major American jurist a judicial brigand, like buccaneer. Like he was like just out there seizing territory for his court, right? But it's not just that their worldview is a very specific left-wing worldview, which I'm not criticizing in and of itself, but doesn't have a place in the court. And the fact that with the decline of the ability of the left to marshal votes and therefore push their agenda in the legitimate fashion of parliament, the fact that they now rely upon the courts is a huge danger to our popular democracy. It's bad news.
And so the court is basically taking liberties, or taking away liberties, right?
In the name of democracy, and that's
in the name of democracy.
The double speech element there makes my flesh crawl.
Well, I'll tell you, here in Israel, they throw around the word democracy a lot of times. It's almost like a kid who misuses a word because he doesn't know the meaning of it.
I always just think of The Princess Bride. You keep on using that word. You don't think it means what you think it means.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And that's my feeling around here. Anyway, so just as we're like in this massive
pandemic.
Pandemic, but it's like a personal challenge on everybody.
We've all been sent to our room.
We've all been sent to our rooms.
People.
Yeah. But I'm not even talking globally. I'm talking about just in Israel.
Sure.
And on the one hand, you've got this figure of Netanyahu, which, like him or not like him, and people like me generally like him, but like him or not like him.
I'm a fan. I'm not so happy with the way he's behaving lately, but I'm a fan of him.
But on the other hand, you do get a feeling like here's a trustworthy person to lead us in this.
Oh gosh.
In this this crisis.
I had one of my colleagues who shall remain nameless, who is far from right wing, admit to me in a meeting the other day that she, as much as she would never vote for the guy, had never voted for the guy, didn't want to see him replaced right now because he is the leader for the moment. He's at his best. I'm sure you've been watching him when he speaks.
Absolutely.
And one of the world's great communicators, as you've mentioned before. It's just like, this is the type of leader we need right now, not a bunch of children scrabbling for political prizes. That's
right. You know, Rabbi Mike, it's funny. I talked about this with you last time, and that is that technology is one of the actors in this game of this pandemic. Technology, the Zoom that we're doing right now, WhatsApp, Facebook, they are really playing major roles in this what's happening.
Yeah, for sure.
In our house, we also have a very old technology. This was something that I was very excited about. I got a few months ago. I was telling my wife for a long time, we need to have Israeli TV channels in the house somehow. And she was against it because we don't really watch TV per se. We don't have a TV. But I said to her, listen, I think we're missing a picture of Israel. I think we're not understanding our own country. And since we're involved in our own country, we might as well see everything that's going on.
I hear that.
So I bought a box. It's a little box that basically is digital television. It catches about 10 Israeli channels. And they're very boring. There's nothing for the kids to get addicted to. But basically, it's a non-internet based television.
It's basically cable.
It's
not
actually
with all the options, but
it's actually basically antenna.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, it's antenna. It's antenna TV. It's just a digital signal. That's all. It's just not analog signal, but it's actually a physical antenna. There is a physical antenna, like old school. And at night, at 8 o'clock at night, we've been watching the news.
Oh yeah,
we've been watching the news, and so that's something else. And yes, indeed, I've been seeing Prime Minister Netanyahu doing his thing and speaking so. I don't know what the word is. Kind of bar samcha that's the Hebrew word.
Yeah, he's got gravitas.
Gravitas.
I can rely on this guy.
Right, I can rely on this guy. So, but at the same time, we see that his grip, is waning, and at the same time, and here's the scary part: at the same time, that very government, which is right now not in its most stable place, is also asking of us more and more demands, more and more limitations, placing more and more limitations on us,
on our civil liberties.
On our civil liberties, at the very moment where they themselves are saying we don't trust ourselves. And you're like, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
If you're telling me that the Supreme Court is in a messy place right now, and they're undermining Israeli democracy, and you're leaving the Knesset, but at the same time you're asking me to give up my liberties, and I'm talking about, we're not even talking about civil liberties. We're talking about like the basic of. We're talking about leaving the house for 100 meters past our house.
Yeah.
Freedom. So like it's a bit scary. So now our job, Rabbi Mike, and you and myself, we our job is not right now to fix the Israeli.
What? Oh, I was hoping we would do it.
Democracy. It's to give people a little bit of inspiration and a way to think about this all. Okay, you were stuck for a second. I lost you for a second. So
I was back. Fine. I saw you stuck.
I was saying our job is to. Well, one of us was stuck. Okay, we were stuck.
I'm blaming you. I'm blaming you.
So our job is to give a little bit of inspiration, and maybe more than just inspiration, a way to think about it all. A way to think about it all. So I want to talk with you a little bit about like how do we visualize coronavirus either in history or in biblical examples? I'll start with one thing. I've been thinking a lot about this. I've been thinking a lot about Noah's Ark.
Yeah.
Noah's Ark, the Teva.
Would that have to do with the fact that you're stuck inside a 300 cubit area?
Right. And with the animals, I mean the kids. But I've been thinking a lot about Noah's Ark. And basically Noah's Ark is the world is getting destroyed around you, and you're safe in this thing. And your safety is not exactly assured. You're also not exactly safe. You have limited food supplies. Your shelter may or may not be permeable. It may be defensive or not.
Sure.
And you're floating on top of a thing, on top of water.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're like. We're like, okay, right now there's electricity in the wires. There's water in the tap. There's still food in the stores. And of course there's internet.
Big,
right. Big, but it could go down, and we are right now, and out there is this invisible killer.
Yeah.
And it's everywhere. Out there. Right. It could be anywhere. It could be on a children's.
Somebody knocks on the door right now, and the kids instinctively go to get to the door. I'm like, stop, nobody move.
Right.
Like, I will check who's there. And for the first time in my life, and we live in a country where, I mean, God forbid, bad things have been going on for long, but the first time in my life, I refused to open the door without actually checking who's there first. Right. Okay. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. Heartbreaking. Okay. We'll discuss that. I'll give you a chance to explain to me how you're feeling about that. I just want to finish off this thought, which is, okay, so it's, I mean, I'll tell you what is heartbreaking. I haven't seen my mom in like 2 weeks.
Right.
That is actually breaking my heart. That is actually bothering me a lot.
That's what I'm saying, is that knock at the door is expressive of the fact that we've all retreated.
Right. Not seeing my mom for 2 weeks now. I talk to her like twice a day, but it's bothering me. And it's bothering me that she's alone. It bothers me.
Yeah, we should talk about Seder, by the way.
Yes, let's talk. Oh, that's a good point. Okay, we'll keep that in mind. I'm finishing off here. So check out this awesome realization I had, Rabbi Mike.
What's that?
So I can't go through the whole thing now, but I realized that God, during Passover, God says to the Jewish people, "I want you to go inside your houses, and let this death, this invisible death, pass over you." Right. Now, why did He say go into your houses? You could have just been outside. God says, "No, I protect you, but I kill them." We saw that in other episodes in the plagues. God says, "No, I want you to go into your houses." Yeah. And we could have all gone into one big stadium. No, God wants us to go into our separate houses, because God says this is a remake. Maybe He says this is a remake of the Ark. Okay, of Noah's Ark. And each one of you now is on a precipice. You're all inside this little thing, and you're all inside your homes, and you have to think to yourself, do I deserve also to be part of that plague outside? What's protecting me? And here's the kicker. Here's the kicker, Rabbi Mike. Everybody's got to bring an animal into the house.
Ooh.
You got to bring a goat. You got to feel what it's like to be with other creatures. And when you come out safely out of this thing, I want you to give an offering. All right. but like it's a little moment where like there's death outside and you will be redeemed, but you gotta pray. You gotta, especially myself, you gotta think to yourself, do I deserve to be redeemed? That's what I feel like right now. I feel like there's something going on out there. Maybe we're gonna come out of this stronger and better, but right now everybody's being asked to go into their little house and say, do I deserve to be redeemed?
So true. Let's go with that for a minute, because when you think about Noah, the whole flood story, in many ways it's a reversal of creation. Right? You read the first story of creation, it's order out of chaos. Right? In the beginning, there's tov, choshech al, right? There's chaos and darkness on the face of the deep, and it's out of the chaos of the waters that order emerges. One day, 2 days, and finally in the sixth day, you're left with humanity like standing on the land, and right, you picture it. And then what happens in Noah? It reverses itself. The water comes from the deeps up through, overwhelms the land, and all of creation is reduced down to this little chip floating on the face of the deeps. And you realize, wow, actually, it was always like that. It was always like that. The illusion of power, which is granted to us by the Creator in naming us as Tselem Elohim, as the divine image, and in giving us the incredible abilities that we have, creates a sense that that chaos which underlies creation is gone forever. And what I see happening now is the fragility of our world has been exposed in a way. What you said before, like right now, Baruch Hashem, it's hard, but like, I went to McCullough this morning, there's food,
Right.
and it's like, but yeah, it could go much, much further.
Right.
And that
Right.
goes, by the way, to your question of why did God tell us all in Egypt to go into our houses instead of just sort of differentiating in the streets? So Rashi brings the midrash that says, in the hour when the mashchit is let loose, when the destroyer is let loose, he doesn't differentiate. Right? I mean, there's a place in which you have to recognize there's a level of divine judgment loosed on the world where it no longer differentiates. And the grace of God is to let us know there is a place you can hide. Right? Go into your homes, go into the ark. Right? And I think it's critical, that last piece you made, is that there is a better horizon. I promise you. I'll tell you in a second what this plague evokes for me biblically. But there is a better horizon that will come out of this only if we begin to contemplate now what type of world we want to inhabit when we're actually set free from our confinement.
I want to just riff off one point you made just now. Last time there was a global plague like this was 1918.
Correct. The Spanish flu.
The Spanish flu.
Right.
You know what the difference between 1918 and today is? The First World War was still fought with horses. It was a time where electricity just came into public life.
Sure.
And plagues and that type of
disease,
right.
And
was more fresh in the mind.
Yeah, it was part of public consciousness.
Right. We are now living in a time where we've thought that science dominates nature, where we're on top of the beast, and we're in full control here.
Yep.
Okay, we're in full and total control, and suddenly out of nowhere, like a bat at night, there's something,
Shuto.
Right.
And like you said, one of the things you said when we were speaking before the show, it's crazy. On one hand, wash your hands, it kills the thing. What are you worried about? On the other hand, it gets inside you, people are going to die.
Right.
And so that itself like drives it even further. I'm like, what do you mean? I can kill it with dish soap, but it can still kill me?
Right. It doesn't compute. It doesn't compute.
It's a
doesn't
fragile,
compute. And we're just,
feeling.
so we're fragile, but also God is there's an element of humbling. So I got a WhatsApp today from a kind of a very strong a female Israeli writer, and an activist, and she and a religious person, and she wrote, "This is our chance to get rid of kochi ve'otzem yadi." This is our chance to repent for the sin of thinking it's my strength and my arm that is going to be which is dominant.
And I would call it, if there's an original sin of Zionism, that's it.
Right.
And I say original sin because it may have been necessary in order for us to become who we are, for us to transgress in that way. But there's a big tikkun which is available. That's a beautiful point about what might happen. Can I share what I think biblically?
Yeah.
So what's been going around in my mind is the end of the second book of Shmuel, second book of Samuel. Right? There's this scene in the 24th chapter where God is angry with Israel, which it's not clear exactly why, but and then he sort of provokes David to this idea of taking a census.
Right.
Right, and every good Jew who just read Ki Tisa knows that that's a no-no. You don't actually count Jews, even when we're doing a minyan thing. We don't. And so God provokes David, even though Yoav tries to tell him not to do it. And the punishment comes via the prophet God. Now, don't get convinced here. There's Hashem, like God, and there's G-A-D, prophet.
Oh,
Gad.
God.
Well, let's call him
Gad.
Gad, but it's
Yeah.
God. But,
Yeah.
And it's a very well-known interaction between the king, David, and God, because we use it as the introduction to our Tachanun, to the part of our prayers, which we call Netilat Apayim, we fall on our face, which I've been indulging in now that I'm davening alone. We can talk about prayer. We got to talk about prayer before we're done. I may be one of the few people in the country.
You see, that plugs in. That plugs into what I'm saying. You go into your little room.
Yeah, and you fall on your face. But what does God say? Gad, let's say, call him the prophet. What does the prophet say to David? He says, right, you've got a choice. God's going to punish you. You can have 7 years of famine, 3 months of fleeing before your enemies, or 3 days of plague. And what's David choose? He says,
3 days of plague.
Right, but he says, Nifla Nabiyad Hashem.
Right.
Beam Rachamav.
Right.
Like, I want to fall into the hands of God, not into the hands of man, because God's mercy is great. Which is a crazy thing. It's like, what do you mean God's mercy is great? He's just told you, and it seems in the story that God, incited the whole thing. In 3 days of plague, it talks about tens of thousands of people. So I think it was like 70,000 people, if I remember correctly, the number is given, that die. And then the angel of the destroyer is coming to Jerusalem. And David sees this angel, and there's a whole exchange where the angel stops. But what's my point? What comes out of it at the end? Right? The angel stops right over the threshing floor of Arthana.
Right.
And
he stops. That's where the Temple Mount is. He refines the Temple Mount.
That's my point. It's out of this disaster and David's willingness to sacrifice himself. He says, take me. It was me. I blew it. Don't take the people. That God reveals to him that actually where he's standing is the place where heaven and earth connect. Okay? It's through his suffering and his recognition of his failures and his willingness to correct them, which is always David's greatness, right? That a whole new relationship between creator and creation emerges. And that to me is the excitement. I'm not excited about what's happening right now as a thing unto itself. But listen, if you want to change, that means the old world has to go on some level. And we are there. We are there. There's a new world which is waiting to be born. And I would never be an anarchist and say, well, tear it all down. But if things are falling apart anyway, then let's take seriously the potential to build anew. Mm-hmm. That's what's been in my mind.
Very good. Very good. I think those two things dovetail very nicely. And I think also what you're talking about now, which is the Temple Mount and recreating a covenantal relationship with God based on this place and based on God's presence in this place, that fits very well with what tonight is, which is Rosh Chodesh, Nisan. The new month, and this new month is very famous. Let me just look at my little list here. It's got a lot specifically rides on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Mm-hmm. It's a Rosh Hashanah for 5 things. It's a Rosh Hashanah for kings of Israel, right?
Yep.
So therefore, that's not a coincidence. Maybe that today the government starts to change a little bit.
Oh, it should be for the better.
The Rosh. Right. This is also the beginning of the pilgrimage festivals, mm-hmm. because it's tied into the cycle. It's the beginning of months because this is the head. This is the kind of, we're actually going into a type of Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah.
Right. It's also a head of leap years, and it's also the head of the donation of the shkalim. All communal sacrifices brought from this day forward are paid from the shkalim collected in the current year.
Going forward, yeah, this is the new.
Going forward. So we're basically in new beginnings, and also the temple is not the temple. The tabernacle is established on this day.
Yes.
Okay. So there you go. You've got a lot of stuff that happens on this day. And it's considered one of the most important days in Jewish history, in kind of Jewish...
in the calendar, yeah.
Right. Moses himself used to set up the Mishkan and take it apart at the end of the day. On the 8th day, he set it up and did not take it apart. That 8th day was Shabbat and was Rosh Chodesh Nisan. Yes. So the establishment of the tabernacle is today. So that's exactly what you're talking about. You know, we're really celebrating a new beginning. The other thing that I just want to say, because it flew into my head, is like, you never know when new beginnings are coming, do you? Right? You never. It's like labor. It's like birth labor. It's like whoa, we're like we kind of expected something, but like there, it just suddenly appears.
I'll tell you, one of my favorite teachings of our sages is that there are three things that come behesech hadat. There are three things that come specifically when you're not looking: a lost object, a scorpion, and the Mashiach. Right? You can't expect that, because if you expect Mashiach, you're limiting what will be to our current imagination. Whereas when it comes, it's going to be so big that you couldn't have possibly been looking for it.
Mm. Okay, so we talked a little bit about, I had a few topics I wanted to cover. We talked a little bit about ways to understand the coronavirus. We talked about you understand the government situation. We talked about 5 deaths in Israel. That's not a small thing.
No.
We talked about Rosh Chodesh. And let's talk about a little bit about, first thing, let's just talk about what you mentioned before, which is Passover via Zoom. Okay, the Passover Seder. So we've had rabbis come out with very far-reaching new halachic decisions saying you can have your Zoom on, and by the way, you can have your Zoom on so that your parents or something could be at your Seder. Just word of caution, if you have the free Zoom app, it's limited to 40 minutes. So
which your
be
kids
careful.
will love, because you can do a quick Seder and just get through the meal.
So I recommend, if you're going to be in the free app,
the Zoom is going to collapse.
Right. Don't forget the old Skype. It's still active, still doable.
That's true.
So I just want to remind people of that. But like rabbis coming out with far-reaching decisions. Now I want to tell you, and as I talked about it last week, I've been going to Minyan every day. Rabbi Shlomo Katz, here on this network as well, has he has a fabulous range of classes and things happening in his community in Efrat. I've been going, and I've been and we've been all laughing because there's been more people in this virtual Minyan at 8 a.m. than ever in the physical building.
If you had to nail down the commitments now that they're going to show up when the shul reopens.
It's funny you say that, because I thought to myself, maybe it's the exact opposite way, which is like, maybe we're entering a new era of like things like prayer. Like, who's to say that when we're out of this thing, when you come to Minyan, there won't be a camera, and that will be like, for all people who can't join us, we'll be davening today at 8. If you're sick in bed, if you're tired, if your kids are yelling, if you can't come today and you still want to say Kaddish or whatever it is, it's going to be on Zoom, even though there's still a regular Minyan. Like, maybe this is acculturating us to something different.
Yeah, yes, and it is important to note that decisions, the way that the halachic system works, is that decisions that are made b'sha'at dechak, in a time of need, are not necessarily the same decisions which would be made in a normal time. So there are places where you're correct, where new explanation, like probably no one had ever really seriously considered the question, is it a minyan, in the sense of being able to say certain parts of the prayer service if we're not physically together in the same room, if we had, so that there may be things that indeed do advance, but it's important to note that
I just want to say, Rabbi Mike, that it wasn't, just to make it clear, I don't want anybody to misstate it. Rabbi Shlomo Katz was not the person who determined the halacha about that. Rather, he turned to Rabbi Eliezer Melamed, received back a letter with a lot of guidelines about this minyan. And then, I want to tell you one little thing that I had to do with it. He does not do the Birkat Kohanim, the blessing of the priests, during minyan. But I wrote to him and I said, you know what? Like, I really need that. I miss that. I need that. So he's been just doing it, not part of a minyan, but just saying it at the end of davening.
Right, not with the bracha.
He's a Kohen himself. Right. And just like a little thing like that. And like, we're like, the reason I just told that story is to say it's all part of a process of learning through this time.
For sure. And I would say also there is something which becomes available in being alone in prayer, which is a fantastic thing. I mean, I'm a stalwart minyan goer, trust me, in my normal life. But I suffer in public prayer because the pace is just far faster than I would like. And one of the great gifts that's come to me in this time is the wide open space. Just the wide open space within which to pray. If
you get up early enough before the kids get up, right?
Oh, trust me, I haven't changed my schedule one bit. In terms of like when I get up, and I'm staying up a little bit later. But
let's actually make that into a point, which is that during this time, what I've been recommending to my friends is find as much structure as possible.
Yes. We're making a schedule with our kids every single morning. hour
Right.
by hour, half hours sometimes. And it may change, but at night we sit down. What do you want to do tomorrow? What are the things we're going to do? Boom, boom, boom. Today,
Yeah.
gather wood, roast hot dogs on the porch. You know, the neighbors shutting all the windows and complaining.
Oh, we went out to we have a nearby forest. That's where we did it
I've been
yesterday.
doing that too, but today
Yeah.
like they wanted to
Yeah.
stay home. So I said, okay, well I have like a old school just barbecue grill, you know, like open
Yeah.
metal pan basically. So I
Sure.
just built the fire in there and we roasted hot dogs. It was fun.
But where do you dump out the ash?
I just let it burn out, and then once it's cool, I'll dump it in the trash.
Ah, okay. Okay, good. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because
I
I
just
also
dump it
have
down to the neighbor's porch. I mean, that's fun.
that's the way to do it.
It's all
That's the way to do
stone.
it. Okay. We're also entering. Let's tackle one more topic, and that's it. We're entering into a new book in the Torah,
Oh,
the book of Vayikra,
that's right.
which is really, everybody will agree, the hardest book in the Torah.
Especially if you're a goat. I mean, it's just awful.
If you're a goat,
imagine reading this as an ungulate, you're just like, oh no.
Or, I mean, that's one way of looking at it. Or maybe you think I'm finally getting to star in the show here. You know,
I always just think of it as like an Egyptian reading the book of Shemot. It just doesn't land well.
You just made me think about something we discussed a little bit before the show started. There are only a few animals that are allowed on the mizbeach, on the altar.
Yes.
Male and female oxen, male and female sheep, he-goats and she-goats, and only two kinds of birds, pigeons and turtle doves. So male and female oxen, male and female sheep, he-goats and she-goats, pigeons and turtle doves. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it in terms of animals. That's it. As opposed to some countries which are cooking dogs and ripping pieces off live animals.
Yeah.
And some horrific videos have been surfacing lately of practices in some Asian countries, which are just, to us, well, you know what? Let me be more honest. To the Torah, is reprehensible. And by the way, let me add, for if anybody asks, eating flesh from a living animal is an isur, is prohibited by the Torah for Gentiles as well. That is one of the seven. That's one of the 7 laws of Noah. Meaning to say, moral eating, if I can broaden it, is part of what is demanded of God for all peoples.
I'll see your demanded of God, and I'll raise you one, because one of the ways in which we can understand it is these are definitional of what it means to be Tzelem Elohim, what it really means to be the divine within human. And it's deeply problematic, and I don't really know what to do with it. This is where we stumble into this sort of postmodern posture, which is popular out there, masquerading as political correctness, but saying like, well, but you do you. You're like it's cultural relative, like that's okay. But then there's like a famous case here in Israel, which became a debate amongst academics, is that honor killing is, let's say, central to certain Muslim and Arab cultures. So, but it's real. I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked into it. There's quite a complex and profound sort of honor blood system. It's not just like angry guy kills sister. It's way more than that. At the same time, the outcome is still angry guy kills sister. So like you get this postmodern liberals within Israel who are what we call hoist by their own petard, because on one hand they want to honor the culture and they don't want to impose their Western values. On the other hand, you're going to let this guy kill his sister?
Yeah.
Right.
So, I am sure that throwing virgins into volcanoes had a full
deep
thought out
and profound narrative, and exactly. And all the idolatrous practices, and on some level, this is where we as Jews are forced to choose. And it's not so popular to throw down the gauntlet, but we're forced to choose. What is our standard of measure? Is it the Torah, or is it current culture? Right. And now, I would say that's a bit of a false dichotomy, because there's a lot of overlap, and as you just pointed out, Torah itself emerges in different faces in different times. But you know what? When you get to like, don't eat the flesh of a live animal, that one's not so much subject to interpretation. And if it is, what it is it's subject to interpretation towards stricture, if you see, right? And we're going to include more and more in that category, not less and less.
That's right. And so, I mean, if we were strong, we would say to our friends in Asia, we'd say, hey, I don't have any rule of law over you, but I just want you to know that God says thus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that you should do some, and in our opinion, as the priests of the world, you should do some tshuva.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what
The
I mean?
question is how do we craft that message in a way in which it can actually be heard? Since, as you said, we don't
I
have
think
power.
I think there's a very simple answer to that. I'll say it in one word, which is how do you craft that message? Lovingly.
Yeah. But also
I'm saying if you say it in a loving manner, like I'm not coming at you because I'm better than you or something. I happen to be. My job in this world is to be in touch with God, and I want to tell you that His Torah says X, Y, and Z, and you can do with that what you want. I have no police power over you, but if you want to listen to the Jewish people, if you think there's a godly element here, if there's a miraculous element, then But I don't expect the Chinese Communist government to hear that. But I think what should be said.
Many of the people might.
Yeah, and it should be said, and I think we should have the confidence to say it. Again, not the confidence in ourselves. And I think here leads me into the next topic, which is Moses himself. The first word in this book is Vayikra. It's got this little aleph, and the Medrash says, "Listen, Moses was like, I don't want you to write that you called me. I don't want to be that it's that you talk to me. Who am I? I'm just Moses.
Don't call me. Don't call. We'll call you. Right.
Well, it's more like don't single me out.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be singled out. Talk to me like at least write it down that you talk to me like you talked with the Gentile prophets like Bilam. You put this. So take out this aleph vayikra, which is a gentle, like he called to him, and then Moses would say hineni, yes, and God would tell him the law. Just let's skip that word. And God said, no, I can't. That's important that people know that. It's important to know that I was broadcasting to everybody, but you were the one that heard. Mm-hmm. But okay, we'll minimize that aleph in the memory of you wanting to get rid of that aleph. And also as a way to point out to your humility, Moses, the greatest man who ever walked the earth. Here's the greatest irony of them all. The greatest man who ever walked the earth was also the most humble man.
Yeah, but it's not an irony, because we say like hu hadavar, right? Like you said that God was broadcasting to everyone and Moses is the one that heard. It's because Moses was the one who was able to get out of the way and actually hear God, right? He was able to it wasn't about him. And that's why I think that it linked back to what we were saying, is that, if we're going to speak to the Gentile world and assert divine morality, then it can never be about us. The two requirements are, number one, we ourselves need to ask more of ourselves than we will ever ask of anyone else, which is why, of course, there's only 7 mitzvot for the children of Noach, and there are 613 from Israel. It's kind of like, listen, folks, I know that's hard, but we were joking before that the videos of all these horrible videos that are showing up on the internet of things that get eaten in various Asian markets. And then I was joking, yeah, but have you seen the videos that religious Jews are passing around? How there are actually bugs hiding under the seeds on top of your strawberries, and therefore you shouldn't eat strawberries. Like sort of two ends of a spectrum. And so on one hand, we have to demand more of ourselves. On the other hand, it can never be about us. And that was Moshe's greatness. And therefore, think about it, he was a vessel that could receive, because he got out of the way and let God in.
Just to think about Moses and to think about the level of a human being that he was is incredible. And we also shift to a different kind of Moses relationship. What do I mean? Mm-hmm. we had the Moses of Pharaoh's court, right?
Right.
We had Moses of Pharaoh's court, Prince of Egypt. And then we had the Moses of the 10 Commandments, Mount Sinai. Right? Charles, that's right. But like we had the Moses, the Moses of like the lawgiver, going up to the mountain, and those were basically the main
breaking
two
scenes.
And, right, that whole and going back up the mountain again and coming down with a glowing face, and then finally, so those were the main kind of characteristic traits of Moses. Now Moses is in a new scene. He's on a new stage. Yeah. That stage is the tabernacle. And he's getting info in the tabernacle about the tabernacle and about really the temple. And
there are maintain the relationship between creator and creation.
Right. In this new stage.
Yes.
And this stage, I just want to say very quickly, we're taught in this week's Torah portion 5 different kinds of offerings. Mm-hmm. There are the Olah, that's the offering that is completely burnt.
Sure.
By the way, it used to be called Holocaust, right? Fully burnt,
right?
Like wholly burnt. Mincha, that's the flour offering. Shlamim, that's the peace offering. Now, those three, the Olah, Mincha, and Shlamim, are all actually gifts to God. They're not a punishment. They are holy things, but they are
voluntary offerings.
Yeah, voluntary offerings. And then we have two, which is the Chatat and the Asham, the sin offering and the wrongdoing offering. And there's a lot of details about what they are, but the animals are the animals that I listed. In different places, in different ways. And there's also one, the mincha is also the offering that is the flour offering, which is made in cakes, various kinds with oils. And there's also the study of
donuts.
The first donuts, that's right. Time to bake the donuts. That's what they're like. That's what they're like in the temple. The first risers.
I mean, they're eating meat and fried dough all day long. It's got to be a little heavy.
Yeah. Plus that cold floor.
Floors,
I'm always wondering about the cold floor, and there's like a hot room in the temple where the floor is like heated. They warm up their feet.
In there, like
I was freezing out there.
Yeah.
So today we're really this Torah portion. So we're like in a new. Do you see this? We're like in a new government situation, a new month situation, a new global pandemic era, and Pesach is coming, and we're in this new book, and this new book is like about a new relationship with God. It's like there's a lot. There's really like bundled up with today, tomorrow, a lot.
Yes, and it behooves us to open ourselves to what it is which is trying to emerge into the world. We just need, like, to me, the definition of hope is the recognition that what is doesn't define what will be. Right. And so it's in situations like this, when the old is beginning to fall away, where people, when we lack hope or we're consumed with fear, we try to cling to what was.
Right.
And oftentimes you're clinging to a sinking ship, God forbid.
Right.
So that's what takes you down. You have to open yourself to what might be. That's where the hopefulness and the new comes into the world.
Right. And we have to pray to live through it.
Of course.
But
I do want to say this, and I don't, at the risk of being morbid, don't pray too hard for that. I mean, everyone should be healthy and well. Everyone should be married to see their grandchildren's wedding. Mamish. But don't cling too hard to that. Mm-hmm. Because the reality is we've all come into the world to do what it is we're meant to do. And the story in its fullness doesn't depend on us.
Right.
There's a promise.
I accept
not to me personally.
Right.
And so I agree with you. And I'm not trying to be morbid but sometimes clinging too hard is rooted in fear, and it will actually suck away the life that you have.
Right.
Live the life you have.
It's interesting you say that. The Muslims, Islam has a way that they kind of laugh at the Jews. They say the problem with the Jews, their weakness is that every one of them wants to live 1,000 years. Yeah. And I always thought that was a very poignant critique of the Jews. They kind of got us on that. Yeah. On the other hand, the Torah says to us, and let's be clear, because I don't want anybody to misunderstand what you were saying, because you were saying something philosophical, spiritual, but in terms of life protection, the Torah says, and by the way, our Minister of Health said this on television, or he said,
It says me'od. That's the key. It doesn't just say guard yourself. It says really do it.
Yeah, that's right. Really do it. I'll never forget just a quick story that happened to me in my life that really brought the point home to me. Was that it was a summer. I was 16, and we went to upstate New York to some park, to some theme park, and there was bungee jumping off a crane. And there was, you took an elevator up a crane, and you walked out to the ledge. They tied you up with at your feet, and you jumped off. You know what? And I was like,
60-year-old Yishai's like, I'm doing that.
Yeah, I was so punky. And so I got up there, and the guy was like, and he was like, okay, I'm going to count to 3, 2, 1, and you're going to jump. And then he started counting. I'm like, dude, can you just like be quiet for a second? I need to do this by myself. He's like, do you want me to push you? I'm like, no. Just let me do my thing. And I concentrated really hard. I calmed myself down, and I jumped. I jumped off that thing.
Wow.
So that was awesome. And I jumped, and I remember falling. And then I remember the craziest part is flying back. You're flying back, and you see the crane. You see the crane coming right at your face, and you're like, no. Okay, but of course, Newtonian The physics don't let you hit that crane again, and you
if
go
it had been
down.
quantum physics, you would have gone straight through the Earth.
That's right. I probably wouldn't have been there, or I was there and not there at the same time.
Exactly.
Right. But at the same time, I was like, so I get lowered down finally, and I felt so good. I was so proud of myself because I was so macho, and I jumped and I did the whole thing. My friends had to get pushed off; they couldn't do it, and all that. I get down, and we're in upstate New York at a fair.
Mm-hmm.
And out of nowhere, there's an Orthodox, like Haredi Jew, and he starts yelling at me. My eyes, by the way, turned very bloodshot from the thing,
from the pressure, sure,
from pressure. And he goes to me, "Nishmatem odin nafsheseichem, nishmatem odin nafsheseichem." And I was like, I got to tell you something. I did not even understand what he was saying at first.
Yeah, the Ashkenazis was.
I'm like, what are you even saying to me? I'll never forget. Right. He was like, "Nishmatem odin nafsheseichem." Then I slowed it down. I'm like, oh. And I realized the guy was saying to me, you're not allowed to bungee jump. Even though it's safe and blah, 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 you cannot play with that stuff. Postscript, I learned I kind of smiled it off, but I never forgot that. Postscript, woke up the next morning with an excruciating back pain. Ooh. Could barely get out of bed, had to roll myself onto the side. Just a little, there was a double lesson there, which is like, you think this is a joke, you could snap your vertebrae on these things, whatever it is. But anyway, I learned a little lesson that God says, don't play around with your body. Do not play around with your body or your soul, therefore, the housing of your soul. Do not do that. I want you to take it seriously.
And by the way, part of that is because, to go back to what I was saying, is because it doesn't actually belong to you. We're caretakers of our soul in the world. It belongs to Chodesh Baruch Hu. And that's what I meant. When Chodesh Baruch Hu is ready, he brings our soul into the world. And when he's ready, Admei Vesrim will take it away. So I wasn't, God forbid, I was saying not to be careful. But what I was saying is don't cling too hard. Because Emunah comes from an ability to have sort of a certain lightness of being.
Right.
Knowing that ultimately we're all in God's hands.
Right. And that's right. That's right. And it's his dream, his mission, not our mission. You know, we're his created. We don't. That's what I think it means when you mentioned this a few times on the show, like created in God's image. One of the reasons that God says that, I think, is he says, I create you in my image.
Yeah.
Don't try to create me in your image.
Because that's idolatry.
Right. Exactly. All right, folks. Rabbi Mike, I want to thank you so much for joining me.
Always.
I want to say that you, as well as I, are available right now, due to this situation, for webinars.
That's right.
For personal consultations.
I'm doing a lot of spiritual counseling right now. People can be in touch with me, Rav Mike Feuer at Gmail or ravmike@thelandofisrael.com. You can find me on Facebook. Send me a message, people. I'm happy to talk and set up a time.
That's great. And I think it's very valuable. And I think you could really use Rabbi Mike. I think also communities can be open right now to doing Zoom events, Zoom meetings. And I myself am available for that as well at YishaiFleisher.com or YishaiFleisher.com or Yishai@thelandofisrael.com, whatever it is, or Twitter or Facebook. You can find
Yishai Fleisher to Google.
Yeah, that's it. You don't even have to spell it right. That's what I tell people. You don't even have to spell it. It'll spell it for you.
That's how good you are.
Yeah. No, that's how good Google is. But the point is that, and that's also a way for you to have some FaceTime. It's also a way to have a little bit of parnasa in this challenging time.
That's
and I think it's a great opportunity for everybody to use this time to connect. And also our great network, the Land of Israel Network, has many great shows. We're trying to do it more in video and more in all the technology that's available. Let's use this time as best as possible. And with all that, and with all my recommendations for more content, I also recommend for people to do, at the same time, a little bit less content. Use this time for some quiet introspection.
Yes.
Don't fill it up with Netflix and even with Rabbi Flicks. Okay, like use this time to look in a little bit, see where have you been achieving your dreams? Is life taking you? Are you adrift and not where you've wanted to be? Recalibrate. Use this time to recalibrate, and then
feel
not
that
only
new world coming through.
That's right. And ask God to direct you and say you're sorry.
Every day. Yeah, that's not a joke, man. Don't wait.
Say you're sorry, definitely. Okay, Rabbi Mike Feuer, I want to thank you so much for letting me be with you here. And let's stop recording this section in 3, 2, 1. What do you say?